All right, folks, I appreciate you tuning in. We're trying something new with the headset and a microphone and see if this works today. First of all, I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to thank you for subscribing to the channel, and I want to thank you for sharing it with others. If you find something that is of interest, please share it with somebody. Encourage them to either subscribe or share it with somebody else. The purpose of the podcast is to extend a conversation, continue a conversation, challenge people to critically think. So part of what we've been trying to do is share different viewpoints from different people. There's somebody that I read, I quote him a lot, Bill Bonner. And so he comments here, I'm going to read this to you. I think he's a fantastic writer. Meanwhile, back in the USA, the scam goes on. U.S. banks were girding on Monday for another chaotic dash to grab $310 billion in fresh U.S. printed money for small business aid due to be released by the government after it changed some of the rules of the first come first serve program at the 11th hour. The Small Business Administration, the SBA, was set to reopen its Paycheck Protection Program at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, allowing lenders to resume processing applications from businesses hurt by the novel coronavirus shutdown. The bigness of the flim-flam is breathtaking. Already the feds have committed nearly a third of GDP to fight the virus. And still, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, and AOC are all proposing to spend trillions more. Says the rascal Steve Mnuchin, we need to spend what it takes to win the war, end quote. It is a scam on several levels. First, the war is fake. This is a public health crisis, not a war. Calling it a war is just another way to get people to salute the leaders they should hold in contempt. Second, the feds are not fighting the virus. Doctors, nurses, and hospitals are fighting the virus. The feds turned a natural disaster into a man-made economic disaster. Third, they are now desperately trying to save a failed financial system and taking advantage of the crisis to bail out cronies, reward campaign donors, expand the deep state, and enhance their own power. Fourth, the feds have no money saved to give in aid or stimulus. Every penny must come from the people they pretend to be aiding. Fifth, the money they give out is fake. In its most tangible form, it is nothing more than paper with green ink on it. It represents no goods, no services, no earnings, no wealth, and no savings. Sixth, like a phony claim ticket at a hat check booth, this kind of fake money merely entitles the people who get it, that's the cronies, the chiselers, the insiders, to take someone else's coat. Seventh, providing an economy with fake money does not cause it to produce more goods and services. Instead, it sours the whole system, misleads investors and consumers, and reduces real output. Eighth, the most common and destructive effect of this scam is inflation. First, asset prices are inflated. Later, consumer prices rise too, eventually washing out every penny of stimulus spending and more. I think Bill Bonner has a way of putting things. Obviously, he has very strong opinions. Money is considered his beat and has been for a long time. I do think that when we start to talk about bailing out, somebody in Michigan, as an example, is going to need to compensate or have a higher tax basis because people in New York have not been able to balance a budget, California, Illinois. And where we fall into that trap is we're all in this together. We're all in this together. These are things, propaganda, these are sayings that break us down from a psychological standpoint to where we're more willing to buy in. Another person that I enjoy reading is Mr. Gilder, and I think he has some fantastic kind of the way he sees things. He writes, the two experts I have found most knowledgeable and convincing are William Matt Brigg, who earned a PhD in statistics from Cornell and taught there, and Rockefeller University, and German epidemiologist Kurt Witkowski. These are two voices in the wilderness shouting against the prevailing wisdom. I drew 10 conclusions since I am neither a statistician nor an epidemiologist, nor professor nor politician. I can oversimplify their arguments without violating any academic or professional norms, and here they are. Kudos, Mr. Gilder. I will quote you. Number 1, COVID-19 is basically another respiratory virus like many others. Yes, it can be fatal to the elderly and those with serious health risks, no doubt. But fearsome death rates are largely a function of testing bias toward acute cases. The tests are flawed by false positives and false negatives. Asymptomatic spread is speculative in the absence of antibody surveys that measure immunity. The second thing he talks about, all respiratory viruses end through herd immunity, whether through direct exposure or artificial vaccination. The third point he makes, social distancing, closed schools, and obsessive masking prolong the epidemic and ensure a second peak comparable to the first. By flattening the curve, they widen it and thus render it more menacing to more people. The fourth point, the more that young people get exposed, the better. They are the vessel of herd immunity. Closing schools delays the immunity and tends to expose vulnerably old and frail grandparents in the home. Number 5, by delaying herd immunity and assuring secondary peaks in the fall, school closings and other lockdowns will increase the number of deaths among the population of vulnerable and old people. Number 6, as Briggs writes, the H1N1 virus responsible for many deaths is still with us. The 2020 data from the Center of Disease Control affirms nationally influenza A, H1N1, PDM09 viruses are now the most commonly reported influenza virus this season. So that was in January. Number 7, given the ease with which coronavirus spreads, it's reasonable to suppose variants of COVID-19, like common colds and other respiratory distresses, including deadly pneumonia, will be with us for years to come. Number 8, Briggs and Witkowski agree that most testing is unreliable because of false positives, especially in initial testing. Fewer are miscalculations of deaths due to the bug, but there is a tendency to suppose that deaths with the virus are caused by the virus. Very interesting. Number 9, the conclusion, says Briggs, is that it's nuts to implement large-scale testing on a population. It will lead to huge numbers of false positives, which will be everywhere painted as true positives and more panic. Number 10, although closing down the private economy may seem plausible to physicians and politicians, it is an extreme overreaction to viruses that we will always have with us and provides a dreadful precedent for future cases. I tend to agree to pretty much everything they just said. I will say this. We've never gotten a vaccination for SARS-CoV-1. There is no reason to believe that it's a guarantee we're going to get a vaccination for SARS-CoV-2. The flu, it looks like the numbers early on for the H1N1, this year's flu, was going to kill as many people as it did in 2017, 2018. And it was being credited with killing like 13 to 15,000 people prior to this happening per month, which was extremely high. And yet, as soon as the COVID-19, they decided to turn it into this absolute pandemic, we got to scare everybody in the United States. All of a sudden, nobody's dying from that same H1N1 that we know we don't have a cure for. And those death rates drastically dropped and COVID shot up. Just because you have tested positive for COVID-19 does not mean that that's what caused your death. I'm not a doctor, but these numbers have been very disturbing to me as I've watched this play out from January on. And the only reason why I paid as much attention to this, with the help of people on my team, was we had a trip planned to Italy. So that trip, because our nephew was studying abroad, that trip never happened, but we were paying very close attention because he was living in Italy. The State Department and Grand Valley got everybody back. We're thankful for that. Everybody's healthy. But it's the only reason why I've been paying attention to these numbers for so long. Maybe more so than maybe somebody else may have been, only because we had a personal interest. Also, Mr. Gilder talks about how the worst projections turn out to be woefully wrong. We were told hundreds of thousands were going to die if we didn't lock down and have the social distancing measures. And yet, what science really tells us is that herd immunity is inevitable. Think about this for 1 second. This could possibly be the most contagious virus we have seen. And we think for 1 second that we have really made a serious impact with our sheltering in place. What we've really done is we've made certain sure, like in New York, by sending people with COVID-19 positive into nursing homes and killing about 25% of the population in there, that we have not handled this very well in specific areas. I think that there needs to be more of an effort to protect the most vulnerable to this virus, which is the people that are with underlying health conditions and the people that are older. But the cure is actually now killing more people that are the most vulnerable in our community, which is the people with underlying issues being more susceptible to the addiction world, alcohol, and mental health issues. I'm willing to suggest that if we take an earnest look at those increased numbers, that we're going to see that the cure is killing more than the virus is, and not having a lack of empathy here at all for our elderly. But many of those people that are already in a nursing home, they're already at the end of their life, absolutely this can kill my parents. This can kill people that I care about. So we want to protect them. But younger people that are struggling, that are ending up passing away, we need to have similar empathy for them. We know that poverty kills, and I've used this before. I don't agree with the United Nations very often, and I'm okay with not even being in the United Nations. However, their numbers suggest that our cure is going to kill 250 million people on the globe. Think about that for a second. 250 million people die as a result of shutting down the global economy. Wow. This does not seem like this is a very smart choice for any and all of us, especially those of us who were blessed to be born in the United States of America. And we need to start back down that path to take back our country of the people, by the people, for the people. One of the other things that you really think about, we never stopped public transportation, though. Think about the spread of the virus on a bus or on a train. And I know what people are going to say. Well, how are these people going to get to work? How are these things going to happen? I think we really needed to understand how contagious this is, and we didn't have all the facts. And the biggest thing too is more money is not the answer. We keep thinking we're going to throw more money at this thing. It's not the answer. I'm gonna jump in here real quick with Mr. Gilder. He says, but that's how government thinks. More money is always the answer, more of the same. But what we need is entrepreneurial thinking. Economist Gail Pooley of BYU in Honolulu and the Discovery Institute alerts Mr. Gilder to the development in India of a new $200 smartphone-based ventilator system that fits in the palm of your hand. Wow. Bypassing healthcare professionals, it uses machine learning to adapt to the rhythms of breathing and to adjust airflow to the lung conditions of the patients. It replaces the $2 million manually managed machines that have been widely deployed, and ineffectively, by the way, to fight acute cases of lung failure from the coronavirus. According to urgent testimony from the front, these costly ventilators may have actually been killing patients as much as saving them. Now, think about that. When people try to say that the president has blood on his hands because of whatever the death toll they tell you is dying from this virus, forget about the fact that flu deaths have almost dropped off the table completely, and pneumonia too. How much blood on the hands of the people that said you need to put these people on ventilators or respirators? Just think about this for a second. When you give the medical community an extra $8,000 for admitting a COVID patient, and you give them an extra $36,000, and these are Dr. Jensen's numbers from Minnesota. He's a doctor and a representative. And it causes a great deal of morality and ethics to become very cloudy, because the hospital now has a financial interest that exceeds the medical interests of a person that already has stage or late stages heart disease, late stage lung disease, stage 4 cancer with lung disease, late stage kidney failure. These are things, these people are going to die. You're right, they are. They may have already only had a month left before coronavirus they became infected. They may have had less than a year left to live before coronavirus. This definitely put people in, their heart stopped beating quicker than they necessarily would have. But they already had underlying conditions. And so we're just to believe that the deadliest flu we have seen in maybe since the 1969 Hong Kong flu, the deadliest flu we have seen, just stop killing people? If we really got a chance to look at how the numbers have been totaling up, I think we can ask ourselves, is there something going on here that's not being discussed? I want to share with you one more person, because it really gets to something even bigger. And that is, if you saw the two doctors in California that gave their breakdown, and there is some argument about whether or not they're actually using statistics correctly or not. But the one thing that is undeniable is that they're taking their data and they're expressing it to us. And of course we should be able to. They obviously are experts as well. What about Fauci and Birx? Are they compromised? I ask that question. How could somebody be in this kind of a position for this long and not have been tempted through what I was explaining earlier with Dr. Jansen, and how hospitals across the board have been tempted by money? So this gentleman who writes with the, this is an article that he sent in to the Natural News, and it says, it is clear that, unlike what is clear to him after watching these two doctors in California, that unlike Trump's so-called and very conflicted experts on the team, these gentlemen have no financial alliances to anybody. They're just trying to get the truth out. Members of Trump's team, Fauci and Birx, possess conflicts of interest with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and their own financial entanglements with Eli Lilly. It is illegal for Fauci to have even the appearance of a conflict of interest with Bill Gates, yet Fauci's history to replete with these associations, which have appeared on hundreds of news websites except for the sites run by the MSM, mainstream media. Big Pharma has committed a coup against the president and the constitutional rights of the American people. That's what he's suggesting. We've kind of been talking about that. Something's happening here. We can't really get, because if you remember, Fauci was saying the flu was going to kill more people than the virus. All the way up until his appearance on NBC on a Sunday morning show, or a Saturday morning show. It was a weekend show, the last weekend of February. He was saying that. And then all of a sudden it changed. Why did it change? How did COVID-19 start immediately? The flu's killing nobody. Back to this article. The suggestion is that the New World Order is out in the open for all the eyes to see. The COVID-19 restrictions are designed to condition America to accept the police state and the forfeiture of their rights. And you see this even in Walmart stores where you have one-lane aisles. And it's on a micro level that they're trying to get us to condition to additional ways to live our life. The economies of the planet have been gutted, and out of the chaos comes order. And this is the time to bring in the digital currency for the one world currency. We've been hearing about this for a while. The IMF actually made, when Christine Lagarde actually stood with the IMF before she took her position with the European Central Bank, she said, maybe it's time we get our own blockchain, decentralized cryptocurrency. So China is actually testing out this concept with American corporations that are operating in China. This gentleman believes that at some future date, and he believes after World War III, and let me just say that Jim Rickards has been calling for, with the currency wars between the United States and China, that eventually the potential was building for an actual war with bullets. Now, we've had the trade war, but there's been some speculation, and it's not fear-mongering, it's just pay attention, because these things happen in all the back channels until they're exhausted, and then it's real life bullets being exchanged. And he also believes that there's going to be a debt jubilee will be offered to the G20 in order to gain centralized control over the world's democracies. I know this sounds conspiratorial, but when the conspiracy is taking shape, we have to ask the question as to when we finally recognize a progressing plot. So he thinks that you can see some things happening, and he gives 7 things that talks about how insanity is basically ruling. These are examples. And it talks about how in Michigan we've lost our civil liberties. And it talks about how in Dallas they have Salon a la Mode, who's owned by Shelley Luther. She's shut down. She tries to open up, and then she's cited and fined. But 2 blocks away, there's a Walmart where there's really no social distancing being practiced. You have the gentleman in Chicago who was fined $1,000 for shooting baskets by himself at a park 500 feet from his apartment. We see the gentleman in Colorado who was later, the judge, reprimands the police, but who handcuffs and arrests him for playing catch with his family in a park in Colorado. But it still happened. The apology doesn't take away the trauma that was caused to the family seeing their father arrested. The surfer that was chased down. He's surfing. Oh, I know what you're saying. Well, if he can surf, then everybody else is going to think they can surf, and then we're going to have a bunch of people out here. Yeah, we should have a bunch of people out there. Social distancing, surfing, for goodness sakes, in the sunshine, in the fresh air that kills the virus. And you also have churchgoers that have been fined in North Carolina, and yet you've got a fast food restaurant serving large groups down the street. And, White House reporters sit 4 seats apart or 3 seats apart at a press conference, but we're not gonna trust that people can go into a sanctuary in a church and have more services and be able to set, families spaced apart. These are things that have happened, and we've allowed it. And I just want to add that, I've been doing a lot of research. I thank both Trent and Mike, these are friends of mine that we've had discussions, and they both challenged me to, it's all about the science. Okay, let me get into the science. And also I was challenged that Bill Gates and Barack Obama wouldn't try a depopulation level on a mass scale. And so it led me to start to figure out, and if you've been listening to these podcasts, you know that, okay, so Bill Gates left, quote unquote, the for-profit business to concentrate on philanthropy. And since he's done that, he's accumulated, like, increased his wealth by like 30% or whatever that number is. And it's also been tied to this Gavi, this nonprofit aspect of vaccination and immunization of the entire planet, global aspect of it. And what we find out is that they've been using, instead of mice and labs, they've been using human beings. And we know that the country of India, in their Supreme Court, has a case against that same organization because the damage that's been done, and through vaccines, I have pages of notes, pages of handwritten notes. I'm going to, because I'm already, almost 30 minutes in right now, I'm going to attempt to try to give you just these 3 pages of notes are from just one episode of a series that I've been getting into and trying to get as much information out of. And it's involving the current vaccine system in our country. And really, all appearances are how much we've been lied to. And the reason why I think this is so important, and the podcast the other day was the biggest swindle ever, the largest swindle ever, is through our big pharma and our medical system and the lobbying system, and how they have taken, through the vaccines, more money from the American middle class, really. The vast majority of our population has been through big pharma and through the vaccine schedule and through the opioids that they pushed. I've said this before, that I believe over the last 35 years, we have preconditioned all of our kids to be drug addicts. After watching these videos, I believe it even more. I used to think it was just through children's Motrin, children's Tylenol, children's Benadryl, that kind of stuff. But it's not. We've pumped so many toxins into our children over the last 35 years. We need to talk about this, because you're right. It's all about the money. This is the single biggest aspect of how the system has been created to take the money from us. And if we think for 1 second that when we have academia getting on every mainstream media show telling us how we cannot open up this economy again until we have a vaccine, which is 18 months away, if ever, we need to be very much aware that it's their desire, those people that we can't see behind the curtain, that they want to have complete control over us. And I'm going to get into this at a later point, and it might be tomorrow. It's not going to be tonight. I appreciate you tuning in. I hope that you will spend time having a very difficult conversation with the people closest to you. I ask this question often. You'll hear it from me all the time. Do you admit that you were wrong? Are you willing to admit that you were wrong? Am I willing to admit that I am wrong? I feel like I have. I get emotional sometimes when I need to apologize about not being a better father. We are blessed because our kids made it through a vaccination schedule that was damaging to them. And maybe we have increased food allergies, which is true, they do. And maybe we have some other issues, but for the most part, we've avoided the autism, and we've avoided some very, very, I mean, we're talking paralysis, we're talking a lot of things have happened, a lot of horrendous things have happened to kids. And I'm going to get into these things, but are we willing to really ask ourselves and admit that we've been wrong, that we've trusted people? Because we trusted the experts who originally told us it's not going to be, there'll be more deaths from the flu. And then they changed the storyline, the narrative. They changed what we needed to do because there were going to be 5 million Americans dead, 2.5 million Americans dead, million Americans dead, 650,000 Americans dead, 250,000 Americans dead, 100,000 Americans dead. The reason why I point it out is because there are a lot of people dying. Certainly there are. There are many people dying from many things right now, not the least of which COVID-19 is not killing as many people as what they are reporting. And these numbers are confirmed here in Genesee County, across the state, to people that are willing to tell the truth. And if you look at those doctors in California, they're willing to tell the truth, not because they have a financial tie to somebody else that has an agenda that's being impressed upon us, but because they actually are keeping their oath and trying to do no harm. And they've asked a lot of really good questions. I'm going to get off here. I feel like I'm babbling. Thank you for spending time with me. Please ask yourself these questions. Engage in critical thinking. I'm going to try to put together something tomorrow. I don't know if I can get to these or not. I want to get to them as they're timely. But this right here, this is some crazy. This makes you really start to think. And remember why I've been considered a fringe thinker, a conspiratorial theory guy. I read the book, author is Fitzgerald, The 100-Year Lie. I would encourage everyone to go out and read The 100-Year Lie. It talks about this. It talks about what these notes are on from that investigative series that I'm watching. It also talked about something as basic as fluoride. And I really, truly believe that fluoride has helped this. And you're going to think I'm crazy now. But read the book. You won't think I'm crazy. The facts are all there as to how fluoride has been propagandized for us to believe that it prevents tooth decay. There is actually no evidence of that. Fluoride is a hazardous waste from the aluminum and fertilizer industries, and we have been given it so that we will be more complacent and more controllable. The Nazis gave it in larger doses. Again, you can't give too much of it because it's a toxin. It's toxic. It'll kill you. But you give small amounts, you'll stand in line. You'll shut up and be quiet. You'll conform. You won't question their answers. It's more difficult to critically think. I'll tell you, I haven't had any fluoride in a long time. I'm thankful. But it also puts me out there to be a little bit strange. I'm willing to be that. I believe in it so that we can engage in critical thinking together. If you like what you heard today, please share it with somebody else. And I'll get back to you tomorrow with the rest of this. Got to get another, they're 90-minute videos. It takes me a while to get through them. So I'm going to get into that tonight. We'll share it with you tomorrow. Hopefully I can bring it in an efficient way. As always, I'm James Detroit, and I'm out.